We continue. This is Zach Gelb Show right here on 365 Sports. Now joining us, the head basketball coach at Michigan. He's back in the Sweet 16, and they'll have a matchup coming up on Friday night up against Alabama in Chicago, and that is Dusty May. Coach, always appreciate when you join us. Thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm doing great, Zach. How about you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I'm going to be honest with you. I was down at the shore on Saturday, the Jersey Shore. I was at a bar, had a few drinks, had some nachos, and I was watching your team play. And I don't think it was the alcohol talking in me, Coach. That dunk by Yaxel Landenborg was unbelievable, coast to coast, and then the slam. Oh, that was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, he's a talented player, and we need him to play with that level of aggression.
I'll say this too. Knowing his story, reading the letter that he put out there for the Players Tribune, I thought the best part, and don't get me wrong, it's so impressive how he goes coast to coast and then throws down that thunderous slam. But then later on in the broadcast, the camera replayed it, the broadcast replayed it and showed his mom smiling, knowing what she's been through this year. That was just special stuff, really was.
Yeah, Zach, Paramount Plus, the religion of sport, have been doing a behind the scenes story about our team for most of the year. And I think it's going to be awesome to see what type of people our guys are, especially Yaxel's story is going to be, there's going to be some really cool moments. Yeah, his story is what makes it so unique. And for him to be at this level and to be playing like he's playing with his limited experience is as impressive as anything that I've seen.
You know what he was supposed to be, right? Everyone knew when he hit the transfer portal, the player that people thought he could be. But once when you get the kid in your building, that's when you really get to know him. I know you just said he's so impressive, but what has impressed you the most about what he's been able to do this year?
Just his growth. It didn't happen quickly. It's just been gradual, but it was tough this summer. I didn't foresee this happening the way it's happened because it took us a while to get all on the same page to become a connected group. And when you look back to where we started to where we are now, these guys have came a long way, and it's a credit to their character.
So what was that first thought? Because you look at 4 out of 5 of your starters weren't with your program last year. When you all got them playing together, when did you knew that eventually this group would actually click and have the success that they've been able to have this year?
Oh, we didn't know until the Players Air tournament in Las Vegas. I mean, we didn't play well. We were without Merez and Adai, two of our best players for our first exhibition game against Cincinnati at home, which we lost. And then we go to St. John's and we played well in the Garden at exhibition. And then we barely beat a good Wake Forest program and an NCAA tournament team in TCU and barely won those two games. And it looked like it was going to be a choppy season that we had. But something happened, and we took off after that point, and so yeah, I don't know exactly what the moment was, but that was really the first time we thought we have a real shot outside of the first week when we just got the team here and thought we looked really talented on paper.
I don't think you could teach chemistry, but there's something about having a program that has the right culture. You've had so much success at FAU. You then walked into this big job at Michigan, and you've had an abundance of success so far, not even completely 2 years in. What is the culture that Dusty May has at Michigan that allows you guys to have the season that you are?
Well, every day we have a group that cares about each other. They're vulnerable. They put their own individual ego aside for the betterment of the team. And we meet them in the middle. We want them to achieve their individual goals, and we want them to play as well as they possibly can individually. But most importantly, we're all going to be better if we play unselfishly and we play incredibly hard and push each other and hold each other accountable. Because if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, it's impossible for me to hold anyone else to that standard. And so we just have a group that really has bought into helping each other and appreciating each other's talents. They show a lot of love to each other, and I think that's a big part of it.
You have to utilize the transfer portal now. It's adapt or die in this sport. Merez Johnson and Adai Mara last year, they combined for 9 starts at Illinois and UCLA respectively. This year they've gone for a combined 71. How do you know in your evaluation process how a player is ready for more and can accept that challenge?
Well, you never really know until you coach them, but we felt like we had enough information because now you can go back and get footage from these guys in AU and high school ball. And so you can watch enough to evaluate them on the court, and then you just try to analyze the situation they're coming from and project what they can be for you. And I think both of those guys, we really appreciated what their skill sets are and who they are as people. Like they're completely different, but they both bring their own unique personalities to the equation. And so we try to get to know them. We try to make sure they understand how their differences ultimately make them a more compatible group.
Talking to Dusty May, getting back to Yaxel, I read a quote of yours of you saying there's no ceiling for him. So when you get a player that comes into your program that eventually there is no ceiling, like what did you challenge him from? Because his journey from JUCO to UAB, there's different challenges along the way. But when he gets to Michigan, your challenge to him was what?
to work to work a lot harder with more consistency. And our staff's done a great job of holding him accountable and literally making sure that he's living right. He's getting his rest, he's eating, he's making all of his appointments, and just being a professional. And he's, like I said, he's come a long way, but his work ethic's improved the most. His practice habits and his day-to-day routines have, and credit his teammates. There's Namari Burnett's a great example. He's probably as ritualistic as anyone I've ever been around with his preparation for practice and preparation for games. And he basically just grabbed Yax and said, come do my pre-practice routine with me. And Yax has developed some great habits because of his teammates.
Well, why is there no complacency around this program? Because when you get a group and you throw these guys together and they start to have success, obviously you want the success, but you never know how players, especially kids at the end of the day, are going to react to a lot of people saying, hey, Michigan's a team that could win a national championship this year.
Well, to avoid complacency, I think our guys just they look back at their story and their background, and it's not as if they're all coming in as 20-point per game scorers. They're all coming in as talented players that didn't fulfill their expectations wherever they were previously, and so they all have a chip on their shoulder. Literally, I don't think there's anyone on our roster that doesn't have some chip that pushes them a little bit harder. But our guys, I think from day one realized how good we could be. And so they've just done a nice job of making sure that we never settle for just being where we are now.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about LJ Kaysen. I know he's going to be out for the year. There's always a mental component. Obviously, you know what he's going through physically, but how is he doing mentally and just, his support, even though he's not on the court, but what you guys are still trying to accomplish?
Well, it's been awesome over the last couple of weeks to see his growth mentally, where he's almost transitioned into an assistant coach. He told me that after the first two games he set out, that he felt like he was already a much smarter player just by watching from a different perspective. Because when you're not in the game and you're eligible to play, you're thinking, when am I going in? Who am I going in for? Why am I not going in for him? Coach lets him play through mistakes. He doesn't let me play through mistakes. Anything other than learning the game and trying to see it from a different perspective. And so I think he's just seeing our games differently now. For example, we played Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament, and immediately after the game, he rattled off 4 or 5 mistakes that were big plays that typically only coaches would notice the succession of those plays.
And obviously, you want him on the court. You want him to be healthy, but that's just not the circumstance. Having a player to have that intellect and to have that vision, can you even place a value? Because it's one thing, right? I'm sure throughout the season, coach, no disrespect, players get tired of hearing your voice, but to have one of their own kind of point out some things probably does help.
Oh, it helps tremendously. It's more valuable than our voices. The other thing it's done is just it's changed his perspective and appreciation for the game. And when it happened, our response was good. This is going to allow you to be a year older, a year smarter, a year better when it's time to enter the professional ranks. And it also just allows you to do more academically and earn more NIL money because you're prolonging your college career.
So I heard a quote that you said when I was working for Compass Media Networks during this college basketball season before the Duke game, where you said you're going to treat it like it's a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight, and you're going to learn something from it. And obviously, you guys wanted to win the game. You didn't down in DC. What did your group learn from losing to Duke, a few weeks back?
We learned a lot. There are some things tactically and some things that we took from Duke. I'd rather not say them now because they're still playing and hopefully we have an opportunity to compete against them again. But we learned more about ourselves. That was an unbelievable game for us. It was obviously tough in the middle of the Big Ten season, but I do think we responded after that game to play better than we had leading up to it.
Did that loss in the Big Ten tournament final up against Purdue kind of create a new level of hunger for your group?
Probably, yeah. We were a little bit, we were very disappointed in how we played and performed, and it put a little sour taste in our mouths going into the NCAA tournament. It was one of the goals that we weren't able to accomplish this season. But our guys have a real unique way of just getting to the next thing, and so they responded and turned all preparation to the NCAA tournament, and we feel like we're playing really well again.
Most people don't have the answer for Alabama's offense. You see what Nate Oates has been able to do through the years there. That offense is always right at the top of the list. How about the challenge that you guys have coming up on Friday evening in Chicago?
It's going to be a great challenge, just like St. Louis. They play a very fun style to watch and study and whatnot. But we're going to have to score the ball, and we're going to have to make sure we limit their second and third chances because they're so dangerous when they get rolling.
You have two sons that are on the team. One's a manager, and obviously the other one is playing for you. Got in right at the end of the game on Saturday. Just what has that experience been like? Obviously, you have a family player feel in your program, but to have two of your own actually in your program, it's got to be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, the best part is just seeing how much they grow because of this place, because of Michigan, who they're around every day. Our managers are the best and the brightest. They first of all they got into Michigan on their own, which is incredibly difficult, and then they're also very talented as athletes. That maybe they just ran out of talent at some point where they're not playing at this level, but they're really good players. They're driven, and so for Eli to be around those guys every day, and then for Charlie to come here and develop the relationships that he has on our team with the players and managers and staff has been rewarding because you see how much better they are as people and more prepared to go into the world because of who they're surrounded by.
Everyone has a different journey. You're really getting your start as a manager at Indiana. How selective is your process when you go on out there and pick your managers, knowing what eventually they could turn out to be?
It's difficult. You know, my youngest son, he met a friend, and my wife was down on us because he wasn't a manager for the first year. We didn't have any spots open. And so that's how competitive it is that it's, you know, you've got to pass through several channels of the weeding out system, working basketball camp, coming in and making sure you're committed because it's a lot of work. There's often times when I say, if you don't want to be a coach or work in sports, why would you devote this much time to it? But we have a very driven group and it's tough to get into.
Looking back at your time as a manager at Indiana, what are the things that you still take away? Because I always say you learn from experiences and by doing the job. What do you kind of take from that time that you still implement into your daily basis today?
Well, just you still from the other managers. Joe Pasternak, the head coach at Santa Barbara, UCSB, was a manager. Mike Schrage, who's on Duke's staff, the former head coach. Elon was on staff. So you share ideas, you share notes. You're learning from assistant coaches how they speak to recruits, how they interact with parents, and then you're watching Coach Knight, one of the best teachers in the history of sport, teach and coach on a daily basis. It's great for development on all fronts.
Yeah, I'll never forget as a student reporter, and Fran Dunphy's like the nicest guy in the world. But the first time I had to ask Fran Dunphy a question, I was a little bit nervous and had to do something with the controversy that was surrounding a program. I can't even imagine what it's like being a manager for Bobby Knight. That had to be so intimidating early on, right?
Early on, later on, the entire time it's intimidating, but it's one of the things that made us better that we were always thinking ahead, anticipating what needed to be done, anticipating what problems might arise. And so you can solve them before they become problems. And that's one thing about it. You're on your toes 24/7. And that's a heck of a quality to have as you enter the workforce.
When you were at FAU, no one is expecting you guys nationally to get to a Final Four. And then when you lose, obviously you want to win the game and you want to go play for a national championship, but people will praise you for an unbelievable run. And then also another time getting back to the NCAA tournament with the Owls. And you're at Michigan. We've seen what Beeline did. We know the history going back to the Fab Five. The goal is to go all the way. How does that heightened expectation maybe change it all, or does it change it all the way that you coach?
It doesn't change the way we coach. It's obviously a different feeling, but it doesn't change the way we go about it day to day. Now there are lessons we learn from going through that Final Four run, and some things we'll do differently and hopefully better. But as far as the other stuff, we're not motivated or inspired by the expectations, by fear, anything other than just doing the absolute best we can do, and so it's very similar in that regard.
I know the roster changes over so much from year to year. It's just the nature of the sport. So you wonder what a team can learn from last year when a lot of them weren't a part of it. But for you, coming over from FAU, and a lot of times, right, people get the big job and it doesn't work. Other times it does. But to instantly go out there in your first season, take Michigan back to a Sweet 16, win the conference tournament, just what did that mean for you guys as a staff early on to have that success in year one?
Well, it obviously gives you confidence that you can do it at this level because we heard the same things, and you've seen the failure rate of first time Big Ten coaches coming from the mid or low major level, and it's not that high. So there, there's a risk at making that jump and taking that challenge. But I do think year one gave us confidence that we can compete at this level. But in order to get over the hump and win a championship, which we're able to do this year, we needed to change several things that we were doing, and we needed to fix some things with our roster through recruiting.
You know, it's kind of so stupid what we do as a media because you get a job like Michigan, and there are going to be other marquee jobs that open up in the coming weeks, and your name will get thrown out there. Like, is Michigan your dream job? Are you as happy as you ever been?
I'm incredibly happy at Michigan. We love Ann Arbor. This place has been great to us. It's made us feel like home. Do I? No, my dream job was probably a really good high school in Southern Indiana.
Isn't that crazy? Like if I would have told you 15 years ago you'd be the head coach at Michigan, already coming off a Final Four at FAU, and now in your second Sweet 16, 2 years on the job, what would you have told me back then? You think any of this stuff is possible?
No, I told someone the other day if you told me that I was going to be the third assistant at University of Michigan at this stage of my career, I probably would have thought that I hit the lottery. But you talk about dream jobs, it probably would have been Bloomington South or Bloomington North. Bloomington North is an old buddy of mine from travel ball, and in Bloomington South is a legendary coach, J.R. Holmes, whose son's John Holmes, who's at Miami of Ohio now. And so I don't want to put any heat on those athletic directors, but those two jobs were probably my two dream jobs.
I'm sure you'll get a few phone calls. The last thing I'll ask you, just because your journey is so awesome and you're so humbled and you've had so much success, when did you think, okay, I could be a head coach in major college basketball?
When we had the success we had at Louisiana Tech, I felt like I was prepared, and then I missed on that job and ended up going with Coach White to Florida. And then while being at Florida, I felt like I was prepared as you could possibly be to be a Division I coach. You're never fully prepared, just like being a parent. But I do feel like we'd had the requisite success. I'd put in the time and effort to learn every piece of the profession. But that still guarantees nothing. I think I had maybe one interview when I was an assistant coach at Florida. And so fortunately, there's a relationship with the AD at FAU, and the stars were aligned right even to get that job. They're incredibly difficult to get. There's only 360 of them in all of college basketball. And so very, very fortunate.
Well, Coach, good luck coming up on Friday. Hope you have a good long run the rest of the way, and always appreciate you giving us some time. Thanks.
Great. Great to see you again, Zach.